Looking good. The meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Let's see if it's going out because I seem to be being obstructed in some of the things I'm putting up for some reason.
Really?
I
Have you
can't
tagged
under
me?
I can't understand why.
Yeah. Oh, I can't understand why either.
And I'm not really bothered really. So here we are. Comments will appear here. Yep, that's it. Looking good. So I'll try and keep an eye on these comments, but hello, darling. How are you doing? You seem to be having quite a sort of ebullient and interesting time at the moment. Is this true?
Oh, oh, Vita Liberata, Joe.
Oh, what's that? Is that some sort of a continental language? Because
I'm feeling.
the subject that we're going to broach today,
Yeah.
continentals seem to have a different attitudes to people in the UK, I
Yes.
find.
hmm
Right.
And I find it very fitting that I was guided to realign myself and commit totally to this work now. I got rid of my old job, which now liberates me. I can say whatever I want. which is which is timely.
Yeah, it's difficult. I play that game, I tune into my heart and say, do you want me to be completely outspoken? And I get, no, be cautious. So I'm cautious about things because I'm like Oscar Schindler in the enemy's camp, really, where I'm always just every now and then pop my head up to see what's going on. But it does seem to be working, and I think this issue that we're going to talk about, which is all about socks, right? Lyle and Pringle, they're the best socks I ever had, right?
Really?
Yeah, they were absolutely fantastic, comfortable, and pure wool and everything. But that's not the sort of socks we're going to talk about now, is it really?
No, it's
We're
not. We're
we're,
going to talk about something else.
we're going to talk about sex.
Yes.
Sex. What is it? What's it for? Why does it cause so much trouble?
hmm
Because I don't know about you, but I'm seeing that globally, relationships seem to be falling apart very rapidly,
Yes,
you know.
they
And I
are.
know the reason for that because in 2012, on the 21st of December, right, there was a realignment of the planets that brought in a completely fresh and new energy.
Yeah.
And this is called the Great Shift or the Great Awakening energy. But what it really is, in my view, is a purging. It's a purging of everything that's been suppressed, repressed,
hmm
oppressed, compressed, and every other sort of pressure, right? That's forced us to keep things in because we've
hmm
either been, see, I'm already starting on a serious note here, right? It'll
hmm
get better. This will be the 67th, 68th, and 69th time I've said this, right? We maybe get onto sacred numerology in a minute. But yeah, so I feel, and I've seen this in my own experience, that what's being pushed down is emerging and we can't do anything about it because the energy of purification and cleansing is much more powerful than our sneaky, tricky, dicky heads, you know.
Yes, agreed.
So we're being forced, right, in a gentle and kind way, we're being forced well, by what I feel is a Shakti, Kundalini, feminine, nurturing energy to reset the balance on this subject. Now, I don't
Yes.
know what the hell I've just said there, but I'll pass it over to you to see if you can collaborate, corroborate, or whatever the word is.
Um, I've I'm getting words in my ear here. So the first one I got was distortion. So we speak on the distortion of what sex is and how that begins. Like in a state of relaxation and presence with yourself, you experience your sexuality as everything that you are and as everything inside of life. It's a life essence. And unfortunately, that life energy, your life force, can get drained from you in relationships that are not like aligned with your heart. And it's the it's the heart sex coherence that causes transformation inside of the self, which is why you hear people talking about, as you go through your awakening process, you come out of your head and into your heart. And there's a very pure state of relaxation that allows the Kundalini to come through. Unfortunately, we get caught before all this begins in exchanges of energy that are largely toxic, right? and it creates misalignments cognitively. We're making choices from a mental state and from an addictive state, and also getting caught up in exchanges of energy that are depleting your life force rather than fueling it, because that heart isn't connected to it. And also, it puts you in a state where usually the relationships where this is presented, how it looks in a like a simple way, is that you'll feel drained. You'll feel like a lackluster version of yourself. You'll feel trapped inside of a fragment of your personhood. And I got this earlier this week. You're in a state of desire that's never satisfied, because desire is a verb. Whereas when you are working with your heart energy and listening to that, and the Kundalini comes up naturally, you then start to align with what is more of your essence and fuels your life force. You're coming into agreement with your soul, and your soul and the way you attract people is on a soul level, and there isn't that sense of depletion. You feel coherent, you feel aligned, you feel satisfied inside of your own body, and there's a confidence that comes with that as well, where everything that you put out there, romantically or otherwise, is more true of your nature. Like when I started waking up really strongly about 6 months ago, I documented all of this in 10-minute tidbits on TikTok. And you can see my evolution from being like this fragmented girl to now being a woman. And it's happened in 6 months. Now, it first began after I had my son. I started to feel things after I had him. There was a massive change in me. And I remember talking about this, that I had this energy coursing through me that was trying to guide me in the right direction. And obviously, chaos ensues when you don't listen to that. And I did get into depleting situations where I was still active in this like fragmented girl state and in a seeking state. And you're trying to connect with people from your mind and trying to be wanted and desired. And you're in a constant state of sort of entrapment then, in relationships or connections that never fulfill that. And it's toxic to the mind and to the body, and it makes you feel bad about yourself. And that's sort of the simple form of it. It also stops you being able to build up your life force energy, because you're sort of giving it away then, and it's not regenerated by your heart.
Good heavens. I concur. It's
Yeah.
exactly how I see things, or I've learned to see things, that
Yeah.
we've been, for some reason, by nefarious forces, directed away from our essential selves, which is our creative selves. So really, we're suffering from faulty logic and misdirected instinct.
Yeah.
So in other words, we've been programmed away from our natural selves, and we've been sort of almost artificially directed away from this essential, right, for nefarious purposes, right?
Yeah.
And I think, they do say, on these shows, don't talk about sex, religion, or politics. It's all going to come up here. And I'll probably bring up religion in a moment or two.
I probably
Oh,
will as well.
oh, bless us and save us, said Al Mrs. Davis. I never thought herrings were fish. So these are powerful instincts, right? And they're part of the four basic primary instincts, which are, the first instinct is to protect ourselves. That's the
Yeah.
first primary, and that's associated with the root chakra. So that's the primary instinct of self-protection. The second one then is to do with creating offspring, and that's the sex impulse. It's powerful because it's part of the survival mechanism to keep the race alive. Okay. The third one is social instinct. So we move out then. And if we're balanced in the first two instincts, we can move out into the third one, which is into society and into the sort of other people realm, you know. And then the fourth instinct, primary instinct, as I understand it from my learnings as well, is the ability to reflect honestly with oneself. And I think that we've been distorted in all those first four primary chakras, if you like.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening now is this great shift, or this purgative effect or cleansing, is forcing us to look at what's natural and how we've, if you like, behaved with regard to those first four chakras. So what it really means is not to point the finger at anybody else, but to objectively look at our own behavior, right? And look and see how we set the ball rolling, right? Because I honestly believe, Shanine, as you know, is that the soul will attract to itself on a daily basis what it needs to learn next through the human vehicle, you know. And my experience with sex and the impulse, because powerful impulse, and once it's activated, you can't think your way out of it because it will always be driving you from underneath the surface of your consciousness, right?
And it's fear-based. Like, I think it's important to say the addiction to that dissatisfying experience, it comes from a fear-based place of wanting to feel whole. And it's no one's fault, but the Kundalini and the heart, that brings through wholeness. And by actualizing ourselves, putting ourselves first, loving ourselves, that self-actualization begins. We start to access our own soul, and then the Kundalini can come up effortlessly. Then it's those of us, like, we're all pure underneath. We're all innocent underneath, and sexuality has been distorted what it is outside of our true nature. And when we are coming into our true nature, it becomes this innocent, pure, joyful life force again. And it has wisdom in it, it has creativity in it, it has health in it. If you're experiencing ill health, if you're experiencing obsessive thinking, if you're experiencing addictive sexual behavior, very often it's from a disconnect from your heart first. Like,
Yeah.
and loving yourself, choosing yourself begins the process of releasing yourself from those binds. When you can feel that empty feeling. I remember being in situations like this in the past, and it always came with this sense of feeling hurt. Like, there's a pain underneath that. And, seeking, the essential divine feminine energy, that connection. It comes through in a distorted way through sex when you can't feel it inside for you, and that's
Yeah.
when you talk about the nurturing energy. It's so important to recognize and understand that this energy is sacred. It's powerful, and it begins with love. And then all the other stuff comes up that we have been deprived of as a species, as humanity has been deprived of self-love. We don't even know what it is, many of us,
I agree.
and when you start to touch upon your own soul in an open way, an honest way, and notice what is hurting you in the world, that heart begins to open. And it might feel like it's breaking for a bit, but it's only so the Kundalini can come through. You start to see and notice what you tolerated, what you allowed, what you've chased for a long time that never really fulfilled. But what comes in to replace it when you open your heart to yourself is so pure and so vibrant and so powerful. I want everyone to feel the way I feel at the minute. I've never felt as confident and content in myself ever. It brings me to tears to think about it, that this is a potential for all of us when we take away the shame from this experience, because I feel like shame plays an awfully large part in it, and especially for men. Like, this is not anyone's fault. It's how we were all programmed. When we've been deprived of a deep sense of ourself and a deep sense of love for ourself, we do tend to chase then, the connection, the physical connection with other people, but it leaves you feeling empty inside, and and also, just to add, when the Kundalini comes up, your virility returns. Like, it's important to say that. Like,
It's
I feel
true.
like I have to say that,
It's
right?
true.
Yeah,
True.
and it's no longer a thing. Like, and unfortunately, we as women are sometimes unconsciously controlling men through that energy.
No.
Like, Yeah, unconsciously I'm sure I've done it in the past. I can't recall entirely. And if I have done, it's been unintentional. Like I actually have done it, right? But from my wanting love, right? And from a fear of a lack of love for myself,
Yeah.
right? And then obviously then men come because they are lacking nurturing, lacking care, lacking connection to themselves. Do you want me to say that? Right. Ugh, right. I have to talk about the penis now, right? Like the phallic energy, the masculine energy is one that has a lot of power when you connect to the feminine, to the woman, right, in a way that is lust based and obsessional, and the heart isn't attached, very, very, very quickly you feel more disconnected from that individual and more disconnected from yourself. It doesn't actually create what it sets out to achieve. And it creates this sense of feeling used on both sides. Like when you are filled full with your own love and your heart is open, that connection to is sacred. It is a state of presence, and it creates an alignment inside of the body where you feel held, whole, honored, respected, loved, and utterly joyful. And plus, it brings in all this magic stuff that you're able to do too. Like once that energy's moving in you, you can do all this cool stuff. Um, it's taken away the shame because it's so hard to admit when we feel depleted. It's so hard to admit that we feel less than. But this kind of old way of connecting with each other via sex is designed to create more shame. So by feeling through that shame and recognizing that we feel empty, you know, I'm getting emotional saying this, and realize it's not our fault. That's when the heart frees itself up. It's something to be breathed through with a lot of respect and honor for ourselves. Our bodies are sacred vessels, and that connection with another human being is a sacred practice. It is. It's something to be honored and valued, and it never stops. I need to say that as well. Like there's some story that apparently you wake up and then this you don't need to connect that way that much. That's a bit silly. What's that nonsense about? Right?
I agree.
That's mad diminishment of what we are as human beings. It's an expression of love. Why would you disconnect ourselves from expression of deep love? That's ridiculous.
I agree,
Um,
and I think once the taps turn, because the flow stops going downwards and starts going upwards, you know, but you can force the process because I mean people are trying to force it in all sorts of ways, and they can
yeah,
do that with drink, and they can do it with drugs, and that's what tends to happen then. And then the energy comes up, it drives us, and we can't think our way out of it. This is the whole thing that once an instinct, which are there for our survival or the survival of the species, once it's activated. Right? It can't be stopped through cognitive processes. It can
mhm.
only be stopped, right?
Yeah,
If it's required, it can only be stopped through an open and transformative heart,
yeah,
because that's the thing that moderates everything, the heart, you know.
yeah,
So otherwise, we're always on the treadmill of something happens, the impulse comes in, it's got hold of us then, and it's going to try and do anything in its power to have its own way. I want to talk about sex and pleasure, right? Because if there wasn't some sort of pleasure, attached to the act of sex, who'd do it? Who'd
yeah, no,
who? That's the whole thing is there's got to be some motive, and the
yeah,
motive is the satisfaction of the sex instinct brings pleasure. The problem is, and the way the world's set up is, it wants you to keep having this pleasure as often as you can, right? For as long as you can, even into your 80s and 90s, you know. So in order to carry on with this sex act, which should diminish naturally, right? Then we're in a society really, and that's no blame here. I just my experience and what I see that even subliminally we're being bombarded with subliminal cues all the time to try and get us to feel these feelings then. And
yeah,
once they're activated, I mean, look at pornography and look at all everything that's going on, look at all that. It's all designed to start this process happening. and then to make people feel so uncomfortable that they've got to satisfy it in some way. And
Yeah.
then the pleasure is but brief. And then comes the guilt, the shame, the emptiness, the remorse, and all that sort of thing. But Seanin, didn't we set ourselves up before we came here, right, for these experiences so we could learn about, first of all, how powerful these instincts are and how to reset them so that we could learn to live in a balanced, stable, you know, natural way of life. I think that that's what's happening now, and that's why I keep getting is people have got to clean their own act up. Well, how do they do that? The first thing is almost to do a personal inventory of how you've behaved in the past
Yeah.
and how you were driven by these primary instincts. And whether you like it or not, even though you would have and could have and wanted to, you couldn't stop it because your instincts were being activated, mostly unconsciously, and they were more powerful than your head was. And once you start to realize this, that basically you've been duped and manipulated into something that's not natural for you. And
Yeah.
once you really start seeing this, the guilt disappears. When you can accept it, the guilt disappears.
It
You know.
does. It does.
So I agree with you. You know, something else that because I get told things as well is try and explain to people the difference between sex and gender because that seems to be confusing people. You know, it's causing a lot of problems.
D- I need to say three things first.
Yeah, go on.
Right. Men struggle with self-trust because of this drive, which is another way of saying loss of intuition, because it's overriding that.
Yeah,
And it creates predatory behavior and repetitive behavior. And it can be scary for the woman. Equally, it then creates the situation where love is not possible. Because if a man cannot trust himself, how can he offer himself? And, you know, it's not once we bed down deep, what do we really want? We want to be able to love and be loved. And it's a case of choosing, you know, do I want to be that? Or do I want to allow myself to feel through what's here so I can release myself from that bind? Because all it is something, it's something stuck in the consciousness and inside of the body that just wants to move.
yeah,
And, you know, the irony is those that have gone through the extreme of this very often are holding the greatest keys, the most powerful keys for the sacred, for the healing, for the powerful, the Magdalene knowledge. They're holding that. And once they start to make the shift that comes in, it's about the heart. Can you accept love and understand that there's another way and that you're okay? It's not your fault. That's when the freedom
yeah,
begins, putting your own self inside of your own heart. Because there's no judgment. You know, it's the removing the judgment is important. Um, but yeah, you want to talk about gender now. I needed to get all that out first.
no, it's fine. I'll just go back on that. My experience is from where I've come from that I had to list a persons who I'd harmed in the past with regard to all sorts of behavior, including my sexual behavior, you know, and then I had to go and share that. So I made a list of all persons I'd harmed. Then I
Yeah.
had to go and share that with another human being. And that's, if you like, the step in humility, right? That says to the universe, I'm really willing to go to any lengths to be free of this. Can you help me, please? You know, so a solitary self-appraisal seldom suffices. I have to say that. It's all very well knowing what you've done, but really to express it with somebody else who you can trust, right? And if there's nobody that you can trust, maybe go and find a priest because that's what the confessional box is for. Go to a church where you've never been before and say to the priest, I need to get this off my chest. I've done an inventory here of all my behaviors with regard to, there's only three really. There's sex, violence, and stealing. All right. They're the three things, you know. So you make a list all persons you've harmed or all organizations, and you start to get honest with yourself. and then you go and share that with somebody else. And I know from my personal experience, just starting the whole process opens your heart up and starts to bring in a new energy. And it's almost when you've got shut of a lot of stuff, which is basically a lot of my stuff was I was afraid of natural feelings because I was brought up in a very strict Irish Roman Catholic background where any mention, any mention of the word sex, right, you were going to hell, right? And so
I was
I've got,
going to hell just for looking the way I look. Thank you very much. Right? I
well,
think
well,
a lot
and
of
this
women
is,
can could hold testament to that.
but
But
that,
yes,
but what I'm saying is, here was my first sex education lesson, right, in a Christian Brothers college, right? It was some of you boys will be growing hair where you've never had hair before, right? And you'll be feeling feelings that you've never had before. If you touch it, you're going to hell. Well, we were all in hell, weren't we, the next day? And so from the age of 12, 13, 14, I've been in hell with regards to this. Now, here's the next thing, my personal experience. But Seanin, when I drank, all that stuff that was pushed down, it was up, right? It was up. And it never came up in a ferocious, impulsive sort of way. It came up as romance, right? It came up. And this is the thing about romance. Sometimes romance is just a very subtle way of being under the influence of this sex impulse, right? It's very interesting how all this works. But what I'm
yeah,
saying is, once they started to see it, of course, right, I was not ashamed. I didn't feel ashamed anymore. But I started to see the things that had driven me and my behavior and
yeah,
how alcohol and drugs had affected that as well. My big thing for the whole world is if I ruled the world, it would for people to understand how love in a natural way, right, and the procreation of children will make this world a better place. But when you
yeah,
consider that the way that the race is now, right, probably about 90% of the world's children have been born, right, under the influence of drink, drugs, or other things as well, you know. And I think it's going to take some time for that to shift and for this more natural and wholehearted way to come forward. Over to you, kiddo. And by the way, you said process before. Have you become like an American person or think?
I might have done. I don't know. Honestly, I can't account for a lot of the stuff I say at the moment. I repeat what I hear.
Okay.
A lot of the
You've
stuff
got
is
like a
being
Native
debated.
American bloody Yankee process going on.
Like I'm speaking to my own experience personally, and I want to say this for women too, because like I've got to bring the women's experience in here as well. Like I would have kind of read a man and went, what does he like? And try and meet his needs that way in order to be loved. But it would leave me feeling really sad
Yeah.
because I was like, I'm quite like I would be innocently very romantic, but like I would be, and I love hard, and I would end up distorting myself to try and meet, whatever the criteria was. And I remember saying this to a friend a number of months ago. It's like it actually kind of scares me a little bit, like, but I would take myself out of myself
Yeah.
and in order to meet this stuff. And it wasn't fair on me, but it also wasn't fair on you know the men in that situation. Not that there were many of them, because this is only anyway, because it really wasn't, right? But it was always kind of this exchange of not being yourself and
Yeah.
not putting your heart in it. It divorced me from the ability to share my heart and it be heard, and then also would divorce the man from his heart, because the second there's a sexual addiction to the physical body of a woman, he becomes possessive and jealous
Yeah.
and controlling, and the
Yeah.
behavior gets a bit ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then seeks to undermine the woman rather than honor. Like the love energy isn't there, it becomes this other distorted thing. It's really healthy to be accountable for where we may have kind of not been ourselves and are still maybe not being ourselves in exchanges like that in order to keep other people happy, you know, or to try and have some control over who we are and how we're seen. And sometimes this identity is something you've just tacked on to yourself, and underneath there's something much deeper and more brilliant and beautiful. And because, sex is amazing. I love it, right? And I think we all should. Like, I don't think that's an unhealthy thing at all. But in a loving relationship with one person, that's the way I'm wired. Like, and this feels like the direction we all eventually head. We get to this place where we understand our own sacred nature. We understand how precious we actually are. And, the love will lead you towards a different way of expressing it. But yeah, it's sort of important now that we're not judging ourselves for any of this, because, and that's why I'm bringing it up, the shadow element. I really judged myself for this for a time, because I knew I'd stepped so deeply outside of my own self and my own natural behavior, because I wanted to be loved so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a horrible cycle where you're trying to be loved and then it's not happening, because you're pretty much encouraging, the man in that situation to literally see you as a thing. Like, then he can't see you at all because he's blinded by whatever it is that's been activated in him. Like, it's not fair on either of you. Like, and the women have got to see that, where expression of what we really want and who we really are is kind of the first step towards shifting these dynamics.
I agree. And I think what we're all being guided towards is understanding the drives in human beings. And it's not just sex, it's for security as well. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes people can go into relationships because they want to feel secure. But
Yeah.
then they've got to understand then that there's a sexual component that's involved as well then. And
Yeah.
one of them might go in for one reason and one might go in for another reason. Right. And that's what we're basically saying here is,
Yeah.
So really, those four primary instincts I was talking about, perfect peace comes when those four instincts are in balance with one another.
Yeah.
However, if you're a male and you've got a powerful testosterone drive, right, and it drives you to anything that moves to try and pursue, right, then the social instinct's going to come out of kilter, you see. So there'll be an imbalance there. It's very interesting, this. So how do you balance those four instincts? You let go of your head and you ask your heart to show you the correct actions to take. It's all got to come through guidance from, as you said, from your intuition, right? And to intellect often thwarts intuition. That means what you think you know often blocks you from what you need to know. And I think that that's where many people are at the moment, only based on my experience. And I'm like you, I'm learning more and more and more every single day, because I only ever feel like I'm just touching the surface of stuff here. But how
Yeah.
do you know when your instincts are out of balance because you feel emotionally disturbed, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. It doesn't matter what's causing it. The idea would be is when you don't know, if you feel emotionally disturbed, then generally, unconsciously, you'll emotionally react. You'll do what you've always done, and you just keep repeating the same thing over and over and over. And I think the universe now is helping people, right, in a way to have their hearts broken so that more light can come through, more understanding. So
Yeah.
there's a line in the book that I read. It says that pain is the touchstone of our recovery. So we can't, because that's what we want to do, isn't it? We want to get away with pain, get away from pain. So we take all sorts of things externally when really the solution is an internal one every time.
Yeah.
This is good, and it's such an important subject that it needs to be brought up in a balanced way so that
Yeah.
people can have a look at their own behaviors without judgment. But as I
Yeah.
said to you before, and I'll repeat it because it's almost like on the matapeic, if that's the right word, right? A solitary self-appraisal seldom suffices. So you can know, but if you keep churning it over in your head, it can drive you insane. You've got to really spill the beans with somebody that you can trust and go through that whole process. And once it's out without holding anything back, you'll be freed from it. And that's my personal experience, and it's the experience of hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with as well.
Because sex and relationship where you're like emotionally connected is joyful and fun and adventurous and free, and it's like amazing. Like, and men and women, we sometimes shut off our emotions in order to perform for each other. You know,
Absolutely.
like, and it's when you return to your natural self, it's like the most amazing experience in the world. And it's supposed to be. And again, it's an expression of real love. Like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not something we should be cut off from. The way we are as sensual people is, in fact, like something to be content with and happy with and not have to hide. As a woman, I felt like I had to like really shut that down in me and hide it in me because I was afraid of creating jealousy in women, and then also kind of afraid of men forever. Like, it was very, very rare, super rare for me to feel sexually safe with a man. Right? It is like, it was so rare, and it was something that I'd lean into from an emotional place. If I felt an emotional connection with somebody, then it would be something I would be open to, and it would be the most joyful, beautiful thing in the world. But at some point when our insecurities are running high, we go to sex sometimes as a means of trying to procure some sort of power, and
Mhm.
very often power over each other. Like, and it's not real. It's not healthy, and it hurts everybody in that place. Like, I'm a woman, right? And I'm allowed to have a sex drive. I'm also allowed to have love behind all of that. And that's where I am right now. And when you've gone through the process of connecting to your emotions, the experience of being with someone in that way is a whole different thing. Like, it's a whole different thing.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is. Like, and
I agree. It's sacred.
it's so, yeah,
It's sacred. I mean,
it
that's why
is.
they call it the sacral chakra, because it's sacred.
Yeah,
And comes a point when naturally it's almost like a tap goes on. And as I said before, the flow starts going the other way around. And that's when Kundalini rises to clean up and reset all the other chakras then. So it's all part of a process. But for some reason, there are unscrupulous forces about who want to keep us down in those first two chakras, the root chakra through fear and insecurity and hunger and thirst and all that sort of stuff, and through sex as well. And if they can keep us identified and distracted by that, then it's going to stop people from understanding and seeing the bigger picture. So there's a
yeah,
great big thing going on here that a lot of people understand it, but it's how do you get out of it? And Shanine, it's easy. You surrender this whole business, and you say to the universe or your heart or God or spirit or whatever the fucking hell this thing wants to be called. It doesn't matter what it's called. You
yeah,
surrender to your heart and say to your heart, please show me one breath at a time, one step at a time, and I'll try and follow your instructions so that I can recalibrate and realign myself with what's essentially me. And I think that that's what we're going through. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who will not let go of their habits and their old way of life, right? And there's almost like a split happening where people want to stay in the first three chakras and not ascend into the upper chakras as well. So I see it clearly as there's like a lower heart and a higher heart. And in the middle at 3.49, because the seven chakras, at
yeah.
3.49 is the choice point. Do you want to carry on with what you're doing, or do you want to like stop and be lifted up to the next level of understanding? And I think the other thing is we don't need to chase around anymore. It's to just stop, to open up and allow the process to take us over. I don't know what all that was about, but I think that that's what it's about.
I've got something I need to say. Men don't get told they're beautiful enough. Men are wired to think that what they do for others is what makes them valuable. When a man realizes that he is beautiful for who he is, that he can incite awe, that he can be inspiring, that he can be energetically a force in the world just by sitting there and breathing, you know? if he realizes how loved he is by this world, that beauty isn't dependent on what he does. The heart shifts. Like, and there's not enough of that expression between men and women. There really isn't. Like, I've said it in the past, you know, there are men in this world that deserve to feel cherished and honored and adored. There's so much there's so many linguistics around women wanting that, and yet women are too scared to hold that level, that depth of love for a man. And he's too scared to say that maybe that's something he needs. And I feel like the dynamics of how we communicate and connect with each other, we maybe need to see and recognize that it goes both ways, you know?
This is it, isn't it? It's about reunion of the sacred parts of ourselves, both the masculine and the feminine, within inside us. And there doesn't need to be an external physical relationship for this to happen either. This is an understanding at the depth of our being, you know.
Yeah.
But it starts with, right, I am willing to be shown the actions to take in order to get closer to what the truth of my being really is. You know, and it's written in the stars, it's written everywhere. But unfortunately, before serenity and peace of mind must come emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much emotional turmoil going on in the world now, because it's all part of a much, much bigger process.
It is.
And I think, you know, in myself, and this is me, I've shared my experience and my strength and my hope. Most of the time, I can sit with myself and be comfy, right? Because I've had to go through this whole process of being shown the actions to take to recalibrate and reset the balance at all those different chakras. And I'm all right with me. And I couldn't give two shits whether there's nobody else in the world, right, loves me. I don't give a shit. Even my wife. I'm not bothered whether my wife loves me or not. I'm all right with me, right?
Yeah,
I'm all
same.
right with me. And that's the whole point is, you know, and you
For
know,
the first
most
time
people.
ever, though, which is a lovely feeling.
No, but it's lovely if then there's that attraction and that connection and stuff like that, and all the chakras go boop, 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 boop. Something very magical happens. It does. And people, you know, there's something called the Kama Sutra. Let's talk about sex. And that's all about different positions to put your body in while you're doing this thing, right? And people used to think it was like, oh, dirty bastards, you know, they're doing all these different sorts of things. That really is about alignment of all the energetics. And that's about the sacred union, right, with the cosmos in that physical act. And there's some people listening to this who'll understand what I mean. You know what I mean? And really, I think drink and drugs can disinhibit you that much that you get a touch of what that can feel like. And that's what you get addicted to. It's actually union with God, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bang
it's
on. That's it. That is, oh my God, that is it. Bang on.
but you need external
What?
substances to try and get that again. It's like chasing the dragon. You know, you get a touch of this is what it's all about because
Yeah.
temporarily you get a and they all align like that, and you get a cosmic experience and an outer body experience and all that sort of business. But it's false. This is the whole thing. It's false and it's synthetically induced. And
Yeah.
that's where I was for a long time. My addiction to drink was because I was addicted to love as well, right? And I was like, when I got drink down me, I was like, the night on the white charger, she needs to be saved because she's not happy with him, right? This is true. This was my young teenage life. I'd have a few drinks, then suddenly it would be in, like, and I'd be like scanning around, thinking, okay, you know, and that's what it was like all the time. And in
Yeah.
that process, I've hurt so many people, right? But I see now that I was being driven by a power that was greater than me, right? That told me it had my best interests at heart, but it caused chaos, right? And
I was,
I,
I was,
sorry,
I was always seeking love too, Joe, but I was never seen. Like, I feel like that's heavy for me to say, but like, I was in every relationship in my life prior to now. like, or like every relationship in my life end, right? I was never seen for who I was. I had no idea um that there was a depth or a quality to who I was or what I had to offer in the world. I had been taught by men that the only thing that made me valuable was my body.
Yeah.
And when you learn that very early, it makes you feel really sad about your life.
Yeah.
Like when you learn that really early, it makes you feel scared and sad because like and you'll it created dissociation in me a lot, and I found myself in really traumatic situations as a result. A lot of the women in the world, like, they have great inner beauty. Incredible, we all do have great inner beauty. And I don't think there's anything we want more than the world than to be seen from for that. Like, it's always so I always get this like I'd always get this feeling like you'd recognize the moment where you could see and understand that a man could only see you for your physical qualities. And then I'd always feel this wee like
Yeah.
crack in my heart
Yeah.
and of heart.
Yeah.
And of course, it's something I agreed to, but it's how I had been conditioned to believe that that's where love came from. And consequently, then it's a patriarchal teaching. It's what all women have been taught. And then, we're all taught to then compete with each other. And then it's always, beauty is only skin deep and all the rest of it. And, it creates division between women. And it's just, it all starts from there, from a very young age, when you feel like you are nothing but a body.
Yeah.
It's incredibly sad. Like, and that love relationships, the whole way through my life have been sadness. And I feel like I've got to speak to that for any women who are listening, because I know they're going to feel the same thing. And then always this constant fear of the next person who's going to have a better body
Yeah.
or more tricks. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it just it's horrible because that's not what we're designed for. Like, it's not all we are. We're so much more than that. You know, um, I really hope that, it wasn't too much to say. It's just I feel like an understanding of that experience is important. That's where women have been.
I agree entirely. I mean, the whole thing is now, whether we like it or not, the understanding's coming in, it's being given to us. If we can just
Yeah.
keep our heads out of the way. See, I look at it this way is we've been driven, all of us, by an external moral code, external morality. That's been given to us. But really, there's an internal moral code in all of us that's aligned totally with our soul's purpose. There's
Yeah.
a deep programming that we can't get away from him because we chose this before we came here. And there'll be
Agree.
different degrees. Some people, believe it or not, don't like sex and they don't have to and they don't miss it because they possibly got over that stuff in the last lifetime, you know.
Yeah.
So for them to be in a situation where people are encouraging them, oh, this is what you need to do, get a bit of that down here, wear something like this, then you'll be more attractive, this, that, and the other. They may genuinely not have that impulse at all, right? See, Shanine, when I was a young person, I used to look into people's eyes and I could see the beauty in their eyes. And that's because for some reason my sensitivity was being able to look beyond the physical into the eyes because they are the windows of the soul, right? And I was massively romantic, absolutely massively, right? You know, Romeo and Juliet broke me fucking heart when I was 13 or 14 years of
I
age.
know.
You
Oh my
know,
God.
oh, all those sort of things, you know, Olivia Hussey, you know, and all this sort of, oh my God. And then she became fucking Mother Mary then, or Mary, you know, and it was like, oh my God, my heart would explode, you know. And then I'd be sort of off then looking for that perfect soulmate, you know, fueled by drink and drugs and everything else, you know. And I realize now that you can get to that point naturally and cleanly. And I think that's where we're being led to now. It's all been a massive misunderstanding,
Yeah.
right? And here's the hard part is when you start to see your personal, if you want to call them defects and liabilities in a non-judgmental way, almost like objective, once you've cleared all that out, what comes up then is your ancestral patterns, right? And I had Irish Catholic, right? My mum's from 13 children. My Auntie Doreen's got 15 kids, right? All that sort of thing. that comes up then to bite you on the arse, and you've got to then look at how that's been influencing your behavior. So we're not even responsible for that. It was something that was conditioned in our ancestors that's driving our present behavior now, until you know how to feel your emotions, because your emotions are driven initially by the way that your instincts are cooperating or falling out with one another.
So are you trying to tell me the reason why every girl, and me included, from a very young age, have done nothing but husband hunt is because of the famine?
Exactly. It's all those bleeding
Potatoes
potatoes.
the whole time.
It's the potatoes. Right? Because, and I want to talk about, as people, if they've been suffering from repressed vital energy, let's call it vital energy, right? If they've been doing, and their heart starts to open, they'll get feelings of an almost human nature starting to emerge,
Yeah.
like you said. There's biochemistry behind this, because when the heart kicks off, all sorts of hormones start to interact, right? And there's one powerful one called DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. It's a sex hormone, and it brings up the drive in you. So don't be worried, right? And then all you need to do then is you just need to show me how to use this, right, in a healthy or not harmful and hygienic way. Hygiene's so important, right? And it's very interesting. It makes me laugh now looking back, because I think I nearly killed myself because I was so confused with all this stuff
Yeah.
going on. Because
God,
I'd
yeah.
wake up in the morning and think, how is this happening to me? And when I realized it's because when I drank, it took the lid off my unconscious, and all the
Yeah.
stuff that had been pushed down through guilt and remorse and
Yeah.
teaching and all that sort of stuff, it was up, right?
I want to talk about neurodivergence as well, because see, with autism, I have like a high need for physical contact and physical touch. If I'm into somebody, I need a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
it's like relieving. It's like therapy. So like if I'm into someone in a big way, I'll be a torture, right? But then equally, there's the ADHD thing where it's like that also creates hypersexuality. And when you start to funnel that into creative projects and positive visions for yourself, that takes away some of the pressure to be seeking it in unhealthier places. It's like if you give yourself a pursuit that allows you to activate all of, and this is so important that I said this because I'm I am like a little nun right now, right, Joe? I haven't been anywhere near anybody, right? And the reason is because, and the reason why I can do it is because I'm working with the Kundalini, obviously, and not working with it. It's just doing what it needs to do in a natural way. And if anybody wants to learn about it, go on my TikTok, right? But aside from that, like having creative pursuits and a vision for your life that makes you feel joyful. With the autism, you love that it's the monotropic thinking, like the focus on something you really enjoy, and then the ADHD, right, as well, where you're excited about something that makes you happy. Like that takes you off of those other hamster wheels that are dissatisfying. Then addictions drop away, and you're not chasing things that aren't good for you. And physical movement and all the rest of that can be done in other ways too. And I think we're all human beings. We love physical touch. We love affection. I think we've just not been given the language to ask for it either. Or even to acknowledge that that's what we need. I think it jumps straight to the very dark sort of hunting catch a woman thing for men, because being able to say and honor your affectionate nature, it's not really there in the vocabulary, is it? Like it's not something that ever even comes up. And for neurodivergent men, that's a struggle. That's a struggle. It's bound to be, because you're not supposed to be like that as a man, and that's
Well,
really sad.
there's the thing, you see, you're not supposed to be. See,
Yeah.
we get to a stage where this is who I am, right? This is what I think. This is how I feel. You've asked
Yeah.
me, how do I think? How do I see things? I've just told you, right?
Yeah.
You can shut your fucking gob now if you're going to criticize me, because I've just been totally honest with you. This is
Yeah.
where I'm up to, right? So anybody that comes back with any sort of criticism, they've got no idea what they're talking about. And that means that if you've told the truth, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, people they tell half truths and they keep the stuff back. It's the stuff that they keep back that causes all the problems, because
Yeah.
that's where all the manipulating head comes in all the time. I call that the head editor, as you know, because so when you're in free flow and there's no time for your head to come in, that's the genuine person then. What are you enthusiastic about? That's the real flow coming through, right? And that balances all that stuff that's being pushed down. I want to
Yeah.
talk about this cultural thing because it's powerful. The Irish Catholic thing, and this is my experience. There's no criticism here. I'm just talking about what I went through, right?
Yeah.
But I watched it. I watched it, right? I watched the position the woman that was told to be in, right? And she, talk about objectification, but it worked both ways that as well. Because you could see the manipulation going on with me mother, right? With me grandmother and everything else. So this is
Yeah.
a two-way street, this, as we've said. And it's really for the women, and we're not talking about transgenderism here. That's a complete, we'll have to do that on episode 2, right?
We can
But
do it too. I'm happy doing it too.
doing what?
In episode 2.
Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do one. People keep going to do one. But what I'm trying to say is, right, I've watched it both ways. I've watched women, basically lead men by the nose because they're emotionally insecure. And part of them was, let me look after you because that will make me feel better. Well, that's all part of a natural, yeah. And talk about the sacral chakras associated with emotional insecurity,
Mm-hmm.
massive, massive overprotection, and
Yeah.
then it becomes control, and then it becomes male narcissism, and then it becomes insane pathological jealousy, it becomes stalking, complete mistrust. And as you said before, that's because the individual male doesn't trust himself at depth, and it's being driven by all sorts of there's a phrase I like, and it says instincts on the rampage balk at investigation. And what that means is if you try and stand up for it, it will find all sorts of ways getting out. It's interesting at the moment. I don't normally watch the telly, but at the moment on Emmerdale, right, and Coronation Street, there's this narcissist empath thing going on. And it's whoever's written it is spot on, right, about all the lies and the way that they get out of it with these stories. Very, very interesting, this.
I've got something to say on that
Go on then.
that came in for me a couple of days ago, and I was told to put this out. Is there a possibility that narcissism? I wrote about this for a breath practice that I have, healing original separation, and it heals wounded empaths, narcissism, neurodivergent masking. And this is what I got. I got it channeled in, and then I had that Rita thing happen to me after I put it out. It heals a bunch of stuff, and it's the original separation that happens in early childhood. Narcissists were the most sensitive early doors. And I also want to give a new perspective on narcissism. Is it possible that narcissism is in fact traumatized autism? Early traumatized autism, intelligent
Yeah, yeah,
autism, right? The level of awareness being higher, right? Because there's something about the mind and the consciousness being locked, right?
yeah.
Where there's some correlation, some link between them. And I got told that a couple of days ago. And I just, now that you've brought it up, I'm just going to say it because it's there with me. And I just also the breath. If for anyone who's talking about this, that healing original separation breath really helpful. For that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't particularly agree with the autism. Asperger's gone now anyway, but autism, I see them all as neural architecture misdirected. So this is
Right.
really about electronic flow in like a wiring diagram, really. And as you mentioned it, this is for people to understand that mind is the processor, but the brain is only the receiver of the processor. So the signals are coming through from the spiritual dimensions and being sort of materialized through the brain then into the body.
Right.
I call this, as you know. So everything starts off in the morphic fields, and so this
Yeah.
is really about morphogenetic resonance and all that stuff. But it's the processing and the perception of the individual soul then transmit through the brain. The brain will then send information based upon the frequency of that processing to different organs of the body, right? You know, so if it's all to do with sex, it'll come straight in. It'll go straight to the gonads, you know, either the ovaries or the. So people try and fix it with a biological solution or a chemical solution when the problem's in the mind, it's not in the body, right? And so neurodivergence and atypical, and you know, people get mixed up with what is neurodiversity. Everybody's neurodiverse, but
Yeah.
not everybody's neurodivergent, right?
Got
Neurodivergents are normally plus or minus outside of two standard deviations of the general ordinary human population. They're called highly sensitive people, right?
So I get a different description of this. I get where there's an emotional body wound, right?
Yeah.
And then an entity attachment. Right. That's what I get for a lot of the things that happen. And by releasing the emotional, then it allows the Kundalini to rewire the neural pathways. Right.
I,
So like that's what I have for those things. Where the majority, and basically it's everything that we've done from conditioning, everything we've conditioned ourselves to become because of these emotional wounds that are underneath. It's dropping that conditioning, isn't it? But it comes from an energetic block, which is an emotional wound that is left sitting in the field, right? And I feel like when all these come off, then the neural patterning changes.
Okay, I agree. We're just using different words. I don't use the word entities, right?
Right.
I just use the fact that there's an emotional, not necessarily a wound, but there's something in there that needs attending to,
Yeah.
right? Which will cause emotional disturbance.
Right.
If you get emotional disturbance, you have to look at which part of the body it's in, and then you have to sit back then, go into the neutral point and show me what this is about. And some people
Yeah.
might get a sound, some people might get the vision. It's about
Yeah.
that there. It's about a situation that happened to you when you were 7 years of age. Have a
Yeah.
look at it, sit. How did you put yourself in that position, even at 7 years of age? What was that about? See, and this is hard, this, Seanin, because people say, oh, surely it's 7 years of age. But unless you understand that this is about what's going on at the depths of your soul, sending information into your mind, which then goes into your body. See, the whole point is if you want to use entities, it can only feed off something that's already there. So
The
if it keeps
emotional energy. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
emotional energy. So there's a phrase, again, people won't like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Right. You're only as sick as your secrets. So there'll be a compartmentalized part of you that's almost like hiding away and doesn't want to see the light of day. They're the things that people are being shown now. You've got to go in there now, try and push away what you're guilty about, or PTSD or some sort of traumatic thing. It will be
Yeah.
pushed so far down into our psyche that we
Yeah.
think we've got away with it. I honestly believe that not one single person on this planet is going to get away with anything now. Because how can they when there's still a bit of grit that's stopping the free flow of this unconditional love? It's tough stuff, this. As though we might laugh about it, but this is tough shit that's
There's
coming
tough
up,
stuff.
you know. But
The
the go on, go on.
getting away with it, I'm gonna come at it gentler. Confronting it ourselves is all he means by that, right? The hiding away of the stuff. When we confront that emotional stuff within ourselves, then the Kundalini can come up naturally. Do you mind me just correcting what you said there,
No,
just so
no,
it's
that's
not?
your way of saying it, right?
Yeah,
And
but this
my
is why we're put together, Joe, because I am one end of the language and you are the other end
yeah,
of the
no,
language.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Soporific, what does that mean? Is that a proper word, soporific? Because that's just come into my head there, soporific.
I've got a word,
What?
pedantic.
But
Anyway.
yeah, whatever. But I know that part of my job, because don't forget, I used to not be, I couldn't say boo to a goose. I was that sensitive and that afraid. The other thing about social anxiety, by the way, is if you haven't worked out and got balance in your first two chakras, that's why you're afraid to go into groups as well, because you don't trust yourself at depth. So there's another thing. So you can take all the tablets you like and all the drink you like. The problem is your root and your sacral chakras need to be looked at in a gentle way so that you can.
Yes.
But no, Seanin, I know that there's people in this field who sometimes need that cut through, straightforward advice. And there's
Okay.
some people who need a bit more of a softer, gentler, nurturing type.
I think we do well as a team here, Joe. We really do.
I
And
think so.
I'm enjoying the fact that we're sparring now from very much equal footing these days. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't agree with you. You're miles below me. I agree entirely. I agree entirely. I see people, you'll have your particular skills, abilities, attributes, and all that. I've got mine. They're not the same because what would be the point of that? You know, but if you honestly share, here's my experience, this is my strength, this is my hope, right? If you share that, then it resonates with people. Not everybody. Some people may be resonating with you, not many, but more will be resonating with me. Right, that's enough. I'm going.
Right.
So thanks very much, everybody, for listening. I hope you've got something out of this. It looks like we're going to do round 2. I meant episode 2. Sorry, episode 2. And yeah, it is, in the way that I see it, it is tough going, but there is a solution, and the solution resides within your own heart.
Your heart.
It's in your own heart. If people ask me for advice, what do you think I should do? I say, I only know what you should do is plug in there, right?
Yeah.
Plug in there, because that's trying to guide you. So get that out of the way, feel your way in there and ask the question, hello, can you help me, please? Right.
Yeah.
And then see what emerges. And one of the signs that you've just made contact is you might feel it, but you might start to get massive synchronicities happening. That would be a sign. I know it's massive at the moment, absolutely massive. Thank you, darling.
Like me today, Joe. I said goodbye to my old job.
Yeah.
Straight away, Kundalini went woo.
Yeah.
When I sat there, like it was the best thing I ever did. So happy.
Yeah. Great. And I really hope that it all works out, and I'm sure it will. But my philosophy is, as you know, is see what happens tomorrow, make the best of it, then wipe the slate clean, and then the next day do the same again.
Yes.
I love you like mad, and thanks very much. And thank you, everybody. And by the way, if you want any advice and stuff like that, don't get on to me because I'm too busy. But Seanin's got like some sort of a site. How would people get in touch with you?
Well, via Facebook, but I've got my email up on my Facebook profile as well. On Waking the World 369 on TikTok, Seanin Ann on Facebook, and then Seanin A Freel at gmail.com. I'll stick it on underneath the video if we want. But yeah, I'm starting a mentoring program called True Nature, and it's returning everybody to their true nature, to their happiness, to their confidence, to their freedom, to their Kundalini rising and being in their heart forever, which is like no bad thing. And it's uncomplicated and it's simple and it's good crack, and it's just me being a friend while we go through that process. So if anyone's interested, then give me a shout.
Sounds great to me.
Thanks,
Good luck
Joe.
with that, and we'll be in touch to organize another one.
Will do. Cheers, Joe. Love
Bye.
you.
Bye, darling. Love you too. Bye bye.